Okay, welcome to this week's episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Dai-Shihan here from Warrior Concepts here in East Central Pennsylvania. Of course, a lot of my followers already know that. Anyway, so if you're catching this as a recording, these things are normally done live every week on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm running a little bit late today because I had technology issues. So this is, again, for the new folks, this is a strategy and tactics level training. So if you're here to watch a dancing monkey demonstrate more techniques that you could just go and binge watch over on YouTube, not the place to be. Okay. We do that stuff. That just happens to happen during our Friday master classes that springboard off of this. So this type of training is really for folks that want to do more than technique collection or be entertained instead of, I don't know, working or hanging out with family or whatever. So this is the thinking part, right? So what we're taking a look at this week is scenario-based training, right? So we'll break that down here in just a minute. But what we're really going to look at is this idea of training from the worst positions, right? Disadvantaged positions. That's actually what I'm going to be working with during the Friday Masterclass. I'll talk about that here in just a bit because it's just we can't do everything, right? So I'm going to take a look at some scenario types, and we're going to take a look at some strategic and tactical principles that we can carry with us on a day-to-day basis, but more importantly, to make sure that they're integrated into our training to make sure that we're really prepared, okay? So I very quickly threw this together based on my notes. If you caught the theme for this week during Kuden, right, our weekly podcast that happens at 8 p.m. Eastern every Monday, this week we took a look at a different way to look at the Japanese word Shi-No-Bi, which is an alternate word for ninja. The word ninja itself is relatively new. Not that it was made up; it's just very new. But this Shinobi, Shinobu, and ninja kind of character, most people are used to seeing it. As a matter of fact, we have it in the logo right there in that upper corner. Okay, so most people are used to seeing that, but long before things were reduced to that character, I guess I need to be pointing in that direction. That character, there was a very, very old way of writing Shinobi. That was actually the title given to some information gatherers that this guy named Prince Shotoku, way back in ancient Japan, came up with. But the characters used to write Shinobi, not that one. Okay, I'm not gonna write them out. As a matter of fact, let me move some things here, make this a little bit more understandable. Okay. So 3 kanji characters, Shi, no, Bi. Okay? So again, that's not kanji, right? That's romaji, right? Writing things out in English. Okay? So, but what we took a look at during Kuden was that these words do not create a definition of like spy or information gather or whatever. Now, they do imply skill sets and they do imply intent and those kind of things. But what we did was we took a look at it. Hatsumi Sensei taught all of us how to do this a long time ago, to where we looked at it from a different kind of perspective. So I took the kanji, I took the pronunciation, shinobi, right? Another term for ninja. And we just very, very quickly broke it out. So if you caught Kuden, this is just going to be a very, very quick review or reminder. I just need to catch everybody else up here very, very quickly because this is the path. This is the process to become this enduring person, this person who can survive against overwhelming odds, right? This person that is adaptable, flexible, resilient, those kind of things, right? So again, these kanji, none of them have that one. None of them have that kanji in them, that nin, right? Kanji. The very first one has the bottom part of that kanji, right? But pronunciation is the same, but if we look at them individually, shi, right, is will or intent, okay, aspirations, that kind of thing, right? No, very complex kanji. This one represents or means abilities, capabilities, skill sets. We'll just paraphrase here, right? Skill sets. Okay, skills or skill sets, right? B, another complex kanji. This represents the state of preparedness, right? To be equipped, right? And the ability to like respond and attend to, right? To take care of something, right? The ability to attend to whatever the task at hand is, okay? And so this really points to people or individuals who have a willingness and intent to gain or develop the abilities and skill sets that allow them to be prepared and equipped and whatnot to handle or to attend to whatever the task at hand is. Okay, and so that is kind of where things really got kicked off for the week, because we also took a look at this tendency of folks to, I guess I didn't bring the other one, to tend to focus on technique collecting, right? Almost exclusively, right? I'll talk about sparring and randori and stuff like that in a minute, right? As opposed to scenario-based training, okay? So what are we talking about here? Well, I always like to start with a problem, okay? So there is a very, very common issue, common problem in the self-defense and martial arts world, and that is that people, students and instructors alike, tend to fall into what I call a technique-only trap. And what that means is they're working on the skills, they're working on the techniques, right? They're working through the kata. They could be working on variations. They could be working on sparring, right, or randori or anything like that. But what that really is testing and pressure testing those skills and techniques, right, at faster speeds with more variables and things like that, right? So it's skills, right? I'm just going to write down sparring, even though I hate that word, right? Okay, it's learning and testing that which has been learned. Okay, but what tends to happen, I'm not just boxing this in to separate it out. What tends to happen is people tend to train in a defined space. And of course, we have dojo, we have training areas, right? You find a safe place to train so that, you're not going to get run over by a train or, whatever, right? That's a different type of train. But there's certain characteristics about this, regardless of whether it's sparring space, it's a MMA ring, whatever, right? It's very sterile, right? There's nothing to trip over. You're not in a confined space other than like the confines of the big space that you're in, right? Yes, there are other people and whatnot, but again, it is what it is, right? Now, unless we have a really big seminar or you go to Japan and you go to Hombu during the really comfortable months, right? Late spring to early summer, just before it starts to get really hot and uncomfortable, or late summer as the weather starts to break to early to mid fall, like everybody goes because, well, it's comfortable. Yeah, I get it. Okay. But it's not comfortable in the dojo because we're just all jam packed in there. Okay. Hatsumi Sensei always discussed that as a good paradigm to train in because you don't have all this free space. You can't train like you've got all the space in the world to operate from, right? But again, there's certain conditions and certain things that go on in here that if we talk about scenario things, right, scenario-based training, folks in here can believe that they're doing it, right? They can believe that they are working with scenarios because like if he's throwing a hook punch, right? That's a scenario, or if he's throwing an uppercut, or if he's trying to kick me, right? Maybe so, but the error here is in treating attacks as isolated mechanical moves rather than events in context, right? Some of you have been around long enough where we'll do things where the attacker and defender start way away from each other, okay? And then the attacker, one or both might start walking toward each other, right? But what we'll start to create is where the kind of situation is like, being at the mall or any place, and you realize you're walking at somebody and you take a sidestep to walk around and they take a sidestep in the same direction and you're still in front of each other. And then you do one of these little things and then you end up chuckling about it because, it was a funny moment. Okay. But what about the moment where, you are trying to go around or you're going past or whatever, and they step in front of you and you think you're in that original situation that you're going to chuckle about, right? And then you go to sidestep, again, and they sidestep and their face starts to change and you realize, well, this isn't one of those funny moments, right? This jagwagon is trying to position and he's making a statement, okay? So we'll do little things like that. Or we'll do things where we're passing by each other and then the attacker does this sudden insertion in front of us, right? So that leans into it a little bit more, but and this is at our black belt level training, right? So this is really important. I'm not saying do one instead of the other. Technique based training. So let me get rid of this only and remove the mistake, right? Technique based training is absolutely right in the beginning, early, and intermediate stages because we need to learn the skills, we need to learn the techniques, and we need to get good at them. How good? So good that you don't have to think about how to do them. But then we run into a ceiling, right, or a barrier, right, where we get really, really good at these things. But are we at a place where we don't just know the techniques, but we know where the techniques are workable in different situations, in different contexts, okay? Do we understand the force level of each of those techniques so that we can stay within a use of force or a self-defense doctrine and not land our ass in jail, which would be a whole different defensive scenario, right? What this is, again, for the black belts is they've already gained these, and they're going to continue to learn techniques, but they're learning technique variations and all that. So instead of learning technique variations, like instead of him grabbing here, he grabs here, or he grabs over here, whatever, and we're going to do the same technique, right? We're going to do Onikudaki, or we're going to do Seion, or we're going to do Nichigeki, or whatever, right? Okay. So we learn those things, right? Them coming in from the sides and all that. It's broadening this out. So is it a technique or is it a scenario? Well, you can split hairs on it. I'm not going to argue about it. What I'm talking about with this is what are the conditions under which you have to do those techniques? Okay. So we're going to take a look at 7 of these things. Okay, 7 scenario types. And once I'm done with these, if you want to, if you think I missed something, just put it in the comments, right, in the thing. We'll take a look at it. This is by no means supposed to be an exhaustive list. This is just 7 things that fell out of my brain when I was putting this thing together, just very, very quickly off the top of my head, right? And then this should give us a better understanding of like where we might be when the situation starts, okay? Because a lot of people train like they're preparing for an organized fight. What I mean by that is, we've all seen these things, whether it's MMA or boxing or anything like that, right? There's the weigh-in, there's the talking smack, there's the promotional stuff. We know when the fight's going to happen. We know where it's going to be. We know what the clothing is going to be like. We know what the rules are, all that stuff, right? And it's designed to be a fair fight, weight classes or belt levels or whatever, right? Self-defense doesn't work that way, okay? And you don't have to trust me, right? But I think as somebody who was targeted, beaten up inside the home, outside the home, and all that kind of stuff growing up, and then became a cop and a bodyguard and whatnot, and have dealt with a ton of scenarios, right? Just we're going to leave counterterrorism off the board, right? Did I break up things that were what most people think of like a fight, just a fist fight on a Saturday night, right? Fighting over the girl or the beer or we bump shoulders or whatever. Yeah. Okay. That's a fight. Okay. What I'm talking about are situations where the attacker either puts you in a situation, puts you in a certain condition, right? You're in a certain environment. There's a certain context to it, right? Not a prearranged fight, not even a situation where a fight is likely, like, around a bunch of other drunks on a Saturday night at a bar. Pretty likely, right? But they've either put you in that situation, okay, or they took advantage of you being in a situation or in a certain position, okay? And so we start painting things around this, okay? Because again, doing the isolated mechanical moves, he punches from that position and he could move around because again, we could be doing it from a sparring kind of thing, and then he launches it from there or whatever, right? But it's isolated moves, and then we're going to respond to that particular move, right? Whether we're trading shots or not, okay? This doesn't take into account like being knocked off balance before that punch comes, okay? Or we do techniques, right, where there's a grab and then there's a punch. We have kata like that, right? A grab and a punch, or two grabs and a kick, or a grab from behind to pull, those kind of things. We have those, but again, right? What's the context? Okay, so it doesn't take into account things like poor lighting, right? Uneven ground or trip hazards, other people moving around, right? I'm a grandfather. Now, my grandson now is 6. But if we're out at the park and he's playing and he's on the ground, and for whatever reason, this person could have just thought I was somebody else and came charging at me, you worry about him, okay? So this is what we're talking about with scenario-based training. There's certain things that are going to make doing techniques or requiring certain adaptations or ignoring certain techniques, okay? And they're going to require a whole bunch of other principles and mental skill sets and things like that, okay? All right, so why scenarios matter, okay? We need to look at things like not just speed, but speed in which I can make a decision, okay? Not just decision-making skills, but speed to the decision, okay? Assessment, risk management, legal implications, okay? And even energy cost, okay? I'm almost 63 years old, okay? I don't have the same kind of energy reserves, right? And I know everybody sees the infomercials selling things or whatever where Chuck Norris is still there and whatnot, right? He's in his 80s, okay? And I get it. He lives an active, healthy lifestyle. Sorry, an 80-year-old's body, no matter how hard you work it, does not maintain or sustain the same energy levels and output as a 20-something. Just doesn't work, okay? This is biology, right? You know the phrase, trust the science. Anyway, right? So this is not opinion, okay? So this is tied to Shi-No-Bi, right? I have no doubt that everybody watching this has the will, the intent, the aspiration to develop a certain level of skills and to be able to handle whatever kind of situation comes at you or is coming at a friend, family member, or stranger that you decide you're going to step in to rescue, right? So this is, for us, if you're a regular, if you're a student who's been around for a while, if this is something, if this thing, ninjutsu, martial arts, self-defense, or whatever, is no longer something you do, but so much a part of who you are that you can't not do it, you can't not think about it, those kind of things, right? Then you're here, okay? If it's a good idea every once in a while, then that has to be developed, but that has to be developed by holding things in front of a person's face that let them know that the reasons and excuses they use for not being at this level, that's what happens when your house of cards, your facade, faces reality and everything falls apart. Okay. But here's the thing, right? Everybody understands that they're learning skills, right? You chose this martial art or whatever martial art you're in or whatever ones you've learned along the way, right? Learn skill sets for a reason, right? Trust them. You can use these things, right? And so you have abilities, but we're going to see over there, strategically and tactically, not technically, not technique wise, right? Okay. There are other skill sets that are required. Okay. And the more complex the scenario, the more disadvantageous the scenario to you, me, okay, the more has to be added to the skill set because the ultimate goal is getting to a state of preparedness, right? The state where we are equipped to handle whatever the task at hand is. Okay. There's a story I heard from Hatsumi Sensei long ago. I mean, I started training in this art, 43, 44 years ago. Been around for a couple of weeks. Where when he first met Hatsumi Sensei, he was bragging about like all these black belts that he had and all these arts that he trained in. And he was really like, and he's always been very, very dedicated to martial arts. But he was young, he was strong, he was fast, all those kind of things. There was a turning point in his life where he ended up getting a type of cancer or some kind of illness, stomach kind of thing or whatever, where everybody thought he was going to die. Okay, him too, and all of that was stripped away from him. And that's why the Bujinkan looks the way it does today, because he had to approach power from a place where if you're stripped from having speed and health and strength and flexibility and things like that, that doesn't remove your responsibility for protecting yourself, right? But when people are this way or they're sport oriented, what do? They retire, okay? Criminals don't retire, right? Not that we're criminals; it's the other guys, right? So he was talking to Takamatsu Sensei about all this stuff that he could do, and Hatsumi Sensei or Takamatsu Sensei said, "Yeah, that's fine, but can you survive? Survive what? I don't know. Can you survive? Survive what? Whatever happens, whatever comes up. Okay? Can you attend to? Can you survive? Can you handle whatever the situation is, the way the situation is?" Okay? Because if we only get used to this kind of stuff, I've been to Japan during those really, really busy times. I don't mind going. It's a whole different way of training, but people are constantly complaining. They don't have any room to move. The space is tight. Or they ignore it and they still do everything the way they normally do it. And then they'll trip over somebody else's leg and then look at that other person like, you're in my way. Yeah, so is everybody else, right? So whether they're complaining or ignoring it, they're wishing silently, unspoken, whatever, that they had the space, or they're operating like they have the space. But the scenario, they're in a packed room, like being at a concert. You've ever been to a concert, like an outdoor concert, no chairs, no assigned seating, right? And you're just kind of boxed in, and crowd keeps shifting, and every once in a while, if you get there early enough, right, there's like a sudden surge where everybody drifts forward, right? And the people behind you, as soon as they feel like there's space, if you're not paying attention, you get moved, right? So there's all this stuff, and you have to, if somebody turned around and wanted to take a shot, right? We've learned how to defend against punches and grabs and all those kind of things, right? But when they're like, right, and you've got bodies up against you, right? That's a very different scenario, right? And even if there is security and there are police and all that kind of stuff, right? How long is it going to take for them to get to you, right? That's a scenario. Okay, that's a condition under which we have to do our thing. Okay, and that's what Husband Sensei pointed out. When we're like all boxed in, this is a unique thing that you must prepare for because you won't always have the space. Okay, so scenario, right? So again, we have to just not have the ability to decide or the will or that passionate intent, right? To handle a situation or to learn or whatever, right? But when it comes to ability, right, we have to be able to learn flexible skills, right? And readiness now isn't just readiness like somebody does something, man, I'm ready to defend. Okay? No. What we're talking about is we're prepared for given conditions. And we know what they are so that we're not like these guys that either do no preparation or have never done it before, and then they find themselves at homebrew and they're up against a wall on one side and a wall of people on the other, and they're trying to push the people away. I've had people push away and then look at me like, too tight, man, we need space. And I look right back and go, I don't know where the hell you think everybody else is getting the space, right? This just speaks to, of course, they have one of the black belts that are like, stone washed and whatnot, so they look like a master, but they need certain conditions. Otherwise, they can't do their stuff. Okay. Anyway, right. So first thing we're going to discuss is something that my teachers called scenario mapping. Right. So we're going to do this in a couple of phases, but a scenario map is you think about conditions, you think about certain scenarios. I'll give you an example. I'm walking down the street, right, and I see 2 or 3 guys, right? Let's say it's 3 guys beating on a 4th guy, right? Just, 10, 20 feet away, right? Or yards away or whatever, right? What do I do? Okay. This is the strategy part. This is the tactics part. What do I do? Okay. Well, most people be like, I run over there and, okay. My scenario map, when I see that, okay, I already have a plan of action for that kind of thing, right? If it indeed looks like, right, it is what it looks like, right? 2, 3 bad guys beating up on an innocent victim. That's one thing, right? If it looks like it could be the middle of an arrest and that one guy that's getting beaten on is really, really big and he's resisting arrest, okay? Because I've been in the law enforcement realm and these other 3 guys could be uniform, right? So when I say beating, manhandling, whatever, right? Because there's very different from this and kicking or hitting him with a pipe or whatever and trying to control, restrain, drag him off or whatever, okay? Believe it or not, perpetrators do yell, help, I'm being attacked, right? Because they want people to rush in, swarm the cops so they can get away, right? Just happened yesterday, right? Many times yesterday. Anyway, so my plan of action is no more than 3 attackers, okay? No weapons involved, okay? I take that back. At this point in my training, could be 1 club or knife, right? Don't look like the other ones are armed, okay? I will insert myself into that situation, draw them away from this other person so he can get away or other people can drag him out, whatever, right? Because I've trained for 43, 44 years to be able to protect people, okay, to be able to do this stuff. So I make myself the target because I trained to get good at this, okay? But more than 3, unarmed, more than 1 weapon, firearm, those kind of things, my plan of action is to take up a vantage point where I can be a good witness to testify about that scenario. Now, yours might not be to be a witness. It might be, well, not getting involved. I'm out of here. Okay. But I have this weird warrior protector kind of thing, and I'm okay with that. Okay. Now, if I see gang tats and things like that, like if they can identify me now or at trial, and that puts me and my family in harm's way and whatnot, that's a different scenario. Okay. But I can certainly send tips in to certain places or send video. Right. So, and today I've got the ability to do that. Okay. That is a scenario map. Okay. And I have one for many, many things, and not just human attackers. Okay. I had a scenario map for the possibility of either a head-on collision with another vehicle, or I live in a mountainous region in East Central Pennsylvania, and so lots of mountains, lots of roads along mountains, and on the other side of the guardrail is a whole lot of nothing. Okay, and I've always thought, man, go over that freaking thing. That would really suck, right? And so, being an ex-cop, I had lots of experience with drunk drivers hitting other vehicles head on, and the drunk survives, bruised, maybe a broken bone, but they survive. Where the other passengers or the other vehicle, maimed, dead, whatever. And so I had to explore that and learn that, well, this person is just uber relaxed. So they're going to get tossed around and whatnot, but it's the tensing up and panic that causes people to break, that causes bad things to happen, because they're not lucid and mobile, right? And so I developed a map. I developed a plan, and you can't really practice those things like running your car into something else. Okay. But I practiced under pressure to just relax everything that I don't need for the thing in the moment. It's the same skill used in our Jutai-Jutsu and our grappling stuff to conserve energy. And so awareness and that relaxation and whatnot. And, so if I've done everything I can to not have that accident occur, and I realize we've crossed a point of no return and it's going to happen, I relax. Okay. If I've done everything I can to not go over that cliffside, why would you go over that cliffside, Sensei? Because I also live in northeast central Pennsylvania, and we have a lot of ice and snow in the wintertime. And so I was on one of these mountain roads, trees were over it, and even though most of the roads were clear, there was a big old patch of ice that didn't melt, and our state Department of Transportation had removed that guardrail the previous spring with the plans. You know how plans work, right? To put it back before winter set in. Guess what wasn't there, right? So I hit this ice, did everything I could to regain control of that vehicle, and felt the left front tire leave terra firma, and the rest of it keep going. And in that moment, I relaxed, kept as much of my awareness on the windows as possible, and here we are, still talking to you today, right? So, but that keeps us from having to make up a plan or make up decisions under pressure with narrowed and minimalized acute muscle, not muscle memory, muscle activity, and also brain work, right? Everything goes to gross muscle skills, gross, I don't mean ugly, I mean like big, right? Gross psychological patterns and whatnot. So if I can have something that I can call up, it's like having a mental checklist, okay? This kind of thing, right? So what it does is it presets scenarios, and it allows me to identify, like that walking down the street and seeing the assault, right? Okay. Uh, Establish key variables, right? And decision nodes, right? Okay. If it's this, then this. If it's greater than or equal to this, something else, right? That kind of thing. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I want to present some scenario types, and very quickly, right? I'll go down through some of these things like attacker mindset, right? Some key variables that would have to be taken into consideration. Primary objective for us. Very, very quickly. I want to zip through these things because I've still got a bunch to cover. Okay. So we're going to start with the most obvious, and then we'll work from there. If yours pops up on the list, yay you. But again, if something on here surprised you, tell me in the comments. If you think I missed something, tell me in the comments. Okay. I'm betting that I missed a bunch. Okay. And some of these actually have crossover. Okay. So don't worry about that. All right. So let's do a street mugging. Okay. Street mugging, we could also call it an opportunistic attack, right? This is where you're out, right, in the world, or whatever environment you're in, right? It could be in your house, right? We had an opportunistic assault one time. I was fresh out of the military, military policeman, counter-terrorist operative, and all that. And some friend that let us stay with him while we were waiting for the house we were going to be renting to get ready had a moment. We didn't realize he had anger management problems. And he hit my wife, and then I inserted myself, and that had to be resolved, and those kind of things, right? So he was having a bad moment. She tried to calm him down. He took that in a different direction. I took him in a different direction, and here I am standing, right? So anyway, so street mugging, right? So from an attacker mindset kind of thing here, it's opportunistic, right? They've got the opportunity, they take it, right? Could be logical, could be illogical, right? That's all about them, right? They may be doing it to test your reaction, okay? Often it's one-on-one, and a weapon is possible, right? Typically in a mugging situation, it's a knife. Could it be a gun? Yeah, of course, right? But either way, right? So there's those things, right? We're already starting into some variables, okay? But key variables are time of day, right? Is it daylight? Is it nighttime? Is it dark, right? And if it's dark, is it dark, or do you have street lamps? Those kind of things, right? Again, type of lighting, witnesses, escape routes, public services, right? Are we on gravel? Are we on flat roadway, cement, or macadam, or something like that, right? Or is it all flat? Does it just transition, like in some places where it just transitions from engineered road to grass or sand or gravel or whatever? Or are there curbs involved? That kind of thing, right? Primary objective in things like this is to maintain distance, create escape routes, use bystander or witnessing, right, to make sure they're paying attention to things and whatnot, right? And then do simple disabling actions to get the hell out of there, right? Because depending on where you are, what region, location, part of this town or city, right? People could be coming to your aid, or people could be coming to help Joe Billy Bob or whatever his name happens to be in that moment. Okay, so that's kind of open, right? But it still could feel generic, right? So let's do one that's a little bit more specific, right? From the ground. Okay, from the ground. You can't do Ichimonji no Kamae from the ground. Okay, you can do Mushadori. You can do a whole bunch of things from the ground. But in this particular situation, right, the defender is down. We're down. Okay, but there's multiple start positions when the defense happens, right? Because we already failed at avoiding a shove or a kick or whatever, right? When we used to do techniques where we were on the ground and they were standing, or we're on the ground and they're on the ground or whatever, in the very beginning of the training, the teacher would say, I don't care how you got here. Or if we did a bear hug or whatever, I don't care how you got here. That doesn't matter in this moment. What matters is escaping. Okay. I get it. Okay. But this works with lots of different reasons and ways that we could get there, right? We could think we're dealing with the mugger that we see in front of us. So we start backing out to maintain distance. Next thing you know, assailant number 2 grabs us in a bear hug or yanks us, grabs us by the collar, hair, whatever, yanks us to the ground. It's not grabbing me by the hair, but you get the idea, right? Okay. And now we're on the ground. Okay. But when it comes to positioning, right? Okay. So the defender's on the ground. That's a given at the moment. But there's different positions. Okay. There's prone, right? Flat out, right? Face down. There's prone, face up. Okay. Sometimes called supine, right? There's seated on your butt, right? There's kneeling. You could be at the park with family and you're sitting in seiza or fudoza, right? Legs are crossed, whatever. Okay. You could be on your side. You could be just kind of kicked back on a blanket, right? Just had some picnic lunch and you're watching the kids play, or you're staring at the clouds in the sky going, oh, that one looks like a boat. Okay. But there's a whole bunch of different things here. Okay. The attacker position, that's variable too. Okay. They could be standing over you, right? Kicking, hitting you with a club, whatever, right? They could be in a guard, right? Like a mounted or a straddling position. Okay. They could be in a tackle position where it's from the tackle, right? They came in with that shoot fighter kind of thing. Wrestler tackled you from the midsection. You're on the ground. So they're not sitting on top of you. They're not in a guard position. They're still wrapped around you. And so there's this top pressure pinning your hips and things like that, right? Okay. So a whole bunch of different things, right? Primary objective here is to regain position, right? So I can create space. I need to protect my airway. I need to protect my head, right? So what are my break falls like? Okay. Because it's a hugely different thing to do a break fall by yourself in the dojo and do it after somebody has stomp kicked you where? Here. Body's going to move a certain way. Here, body's going to move a certain way. Here, body's going to move a certain way. Off center, you're going to be falling a different way, right? It's not, my point here is it's not all clean and nice, okay? Again, the whole idea of using leverage to off balance them, to escape, to control, okay? So we could be in a scenario where we're on the ground. And again, the more I put on here, you're going to see where they start to cross over and certain things. I'm only putting key points on here for each of these, but they're going to start to cross over. Okay. So maybe we're not on the ground. Maybe we are actually living in a Western society and we're seated. Okay. We're seated. Okay. But where are we? Because being seated in a chair, like a dining room chair, right? Or certain restaurant, like, they ask you if you want a booth or a table kind of thing, right? Those chairs, whole different structure, and therefore potentials and dynamics from those than if I were sitting in a booth. We've got to slide in or out, right? Or sitting on a couch, sofa, whatever you call it where you are, or one of these big comfy chairs, or sitting at a picnic bench, whatever, all different, right? Bar stool, all different, okay? All different. So again, the variables we're looking at here are chair stability, mobility, right? The confined footprint of it, right? So 3-4-legged stool, it's not going to tip, or the way you have to come off of it is very, very different than if you're sitting in, let's say, a folding chair. Let the train do its thing for a moment. I apologize. It's one of the only things I don't like about the new location. right? But we could be in one of these plastic chairs, folding chair, whatever, where it's firm and we can get out of it and move it. Not so much with and I don't even own one, but a lazy boy recliner or whatever. Okay? I don't like those kind of things. Nearby obstacles, right? Table, phone, drinks if I'm at a restaurant. Okay. So primary objectives here that we're looking at is using the chair as a shield or a lever, controlling the distance, obviously, and ideally repositioning to standing as quickly as possible. But what we're looking at here is when the attack starts, we didn't have time to stand up because I'm assuming that if you had plenty of time to get up, you're not going to sit there and wait for them unless you're the bait and you've got somebody else that's going to come in and take care of that, right? Or you're creating an escape route, or you've identified one, and so you're kind of biding your time, right? So, but seated, right? How often are people doing that in the dojo, right? Based on lineage, people in this art that have been around for a while, not only standing, but they've done things from Seiza, from Zagamai, from Fudoza. What about a Western chair? What type of Western chair? What if you're sitting in a rocking chair? What if you're sitting in a rocking chair holding that newborn baby that's either yours or you're the grandpa, grandma, whatever, and shit? Okay. Another scenario would be where you are protecting others or you are rescuing someone. Talked about that with that very first scenario that I talked about, right? Okay. So I have to stay between me and them. I have to make sure I don't trip over them. I have the possibility of, especially like, I try to train my family, but my grandson's still 6 years old, right? If he realizes this is bad and he panics, right, he could wrap himself around my leg trying to stay behind me, which is now going to inhibit my movement. Okay. So if any of you have seen the pictures that we did years ago when I created a self-defense program called EDR, it was motion-based defensive response. One of the photos that we did, I was holding. A lot of you guys know my daughter Trinity. She's like 24 now, but she was this big, right? And so I had her, and the attacker started moving in, and I moved to Ichimonji. Well, this is not conducive, right? So as I moved back into position, I yanked her butt out from underneath, right? Still holding on to her, yanked her butt, so she ended up wrapping around my torso and holding on this way. Well, that moved her weight. It distributed her weight very, very differently. And then I was able to move more, and now I can keep him away from her. I'm not worried about tripping over, those kind of things, right? So it's that kind of training. It's that kind of work, okay? But, I might have to do some shouting, yelling, or whatever to get their attention to come to me as opposed to on him, whatever. Okay. So again, variables here could be crowding, legal duty, right, to act versus risk. If you're security, if you're in a position like you're a school teacher or a nurse or something like that, where you have a duty to protect your charges or your patients and things like that, police officers, those kind of things, right? As opposed to the rest of us, or even in the military, right? That's a whole other factor that I didn't add on here, right? There's 3 general self-defense scenarios, and there's different rules of engagement for each of those, okay? So on one side, you've got law enforcement, maybe even in certain states, professional security, where you have use of force doctrine, stuff like that, right? On the military side, if you're on a battlefield, there's rules of engagement. Once engagement starts, shit, rules go out the window, okay? And then you've got the civilian right in the middle, okay? I've been in all 3 realms. I've been, like when I was a police officer, there were certain things that governed my actions on the street, on duty, that changed as soon as I was off duty, out of uniform, at home. Same thing with military, right? Not in a battlefield, not in an engagement, but in civilian world, I'm in civilian life, not really civilian life. I'm back in the world, but I'm still in the military, right? So it's very, very different. Okay. What else? Priority to victim versus my own safety, potential for secondary attackers, those kind of things, right? Obviously, primary objectives include things like distraction and extraction strategy, right? How are we going to extract them, right? Because you can't. It's not as easy as you practice in the dojo and you tell your friend, like, once you've saved him, you go, "Come on, man, let's come with me," and he hops up and runs with you. Okay, if this person has already been injured, right, and they're not moving, okay. This comes up in my realm in the workplace violence world, right, where let's say on the law enforcement side, right, we have a team of 2 or 3 that are moving forward, right, looking for the next gunman, and they're clearing in front, and then there is a paramedic or a doctor or some medical personnel that is now is being protected behind them, and at this spear point, so to speak, they're not just looking for the gunman; they're also looking for victims, right? So if the victim is dead, right, okay, body to the left, right, as we're moving forward, right, pulse checked very, very quickly. If that they can't be saved at the moment, then we're going to keep moving, including the medical personnel, right? They double checked, right? Sorry, we'll take them out later, okay? But if somebody is, they're bleeding out, they're still alive, whatever, we've got a pulse, right? Some very, very quick treatment might happen. So there's going to be a stall for just a second. They're going to stabilize or do whatever they need to very, very quickly. And then we're going to radio for an extraction team. They're going to come forward and they have to be able to move this person out. But you might have to move somebody out under fire, right? Fist and feet included, okay? Primary objective, distraction, attraction, I already did that. Use of proactive control holds and movement to safety, communicating and delegating to bystanders, right? You call 911, right? You hold him, right? Big guy, hold him. Don't let him up. When I take my knee away, you make sure your knee is there. Got him? Great. Take off, okay? So that kind of thing, right? Number 5, vehicle encounters. Okay. I have one of my inner circle students that just requested that for this Friday's group coaching call, I go into these things. Okay. Driving in traffic, out in your vehicle, that kind of thing, right? But it's not limited to that. Okay. So we could be looking at things like are we in our car, are we out of our car? Are we getting in or are we getting out? Right? Being in and being out are not the same as getting in actively, getting out actively, right? We could be ambushed, right? When the vehicle is stopped in traffic, right? Gang could rush around it. Somebody could come up, break the window, or start to open the door, that kind of thing, right? Again, stopped in traffic. If we're moving, generally speaking, you're not in that much danger unless you come up across one of these protests where they've like closed the road and all that kind of stuff, right? Riot, that kind of thing. But if we're stopped, those are the dangerous times, right? They're either opening a door to get in, they've already gotten in, or they're breaking a window, or your window's down. It's, air conditioner's broken, the summer's hot, and they're reaching through the window with hands, or there's a weapon coming in, those kind of things, right? So you're in the car. Are they trying to get in the car? Are they reaching into the car, or are they already in the car with you? Okay. Are you in traffic at speed? Don't worry about it. For the most part, slower speeds, coming to a stop, being stopped temporarily, right? Those kind of things. Okay. So variables here, right? Seatbelt on, off. Okay. If you're like me, it's probably on. Okay. So can you use your seatbelt as a defensive tool? What else? Are the doors locked, unlocked? Angle of the vehicle, presence of other vehicles or pedestrians, potential to violate traffic laws to escape, right? Some people have been attacked in their vehicle and didn't go well because the light was red. Okay. Again, I've talked about this in the past. The way we program ourselves, the way we see ourselves, okay, they function. That functions in an everyday realm kind of thing. I follow the laws. I do things a certain way. Right? but I've had experiences that bit me in the ass, and I've had experiences where I had to train to be able to flip that switch. And yeah, my red light, violate a law to do certain things, right? Okay. So, what else? Primary objectives: secure self and passenger, create space to exit or drive away, use the vehicle as a shield, pre-planned legal and ethical consideration for breaching laws in defense. Yeah. So there was something I was going to cover before I got into this, and I should probably do it now. And that is, if you have or are familiar with our 8 phases of effective self-defense strategy, or our Px8 framework, okay? Most of this that gets covered between these two, okay, is in phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is general awareness, knowing what kind of problems you could be dealing with, right? Tailoring your training to make sure that you are developing the skills so you're equipped to handle those kind of things should they pop up. But also the situational awareness of knowing not just that something is happening, oh my, he's throwing a punch at me, right? But if he's closing in, and right? Assessment skills, right? Legal considerations, who else is around, right? That kind of stuff, right? What's the threat level, right? That goes into these kind of things, right? For some people, it's well, he punches me, man, or if he even looks like he's gonna punch me, like I'm sending him to, he's gonna go meet his maker, and then you're gonna go get ass raped by a bunch of people in prison. Because if you're that way out here, you're either going to fold like a pancake as soon as you get in there, or you're going to try to be the same person, and you're going to forget that you have to go to sleep. Or people can sneak up behind you, and shit happens all the time. Okay? Tough guys have these really, to them, comforting statements, but they don't work well in real life, right? Just check my time here. Okay. All right. So what else do we have here? Vehicles, multiple attackers. I bet everybody was waiting for me to get to multiple attackers. Multiple attackers. But you know what? Multiple attackers, this could be in that street mugging. It could be in from the ground, could be seated, could be here, could be in the vehicle encounters. You could have people outside the car reaching in, and that's the smoke screen. You're dealing with them, and somebody opens the other door and gets in the back seat, and throws a rope or something up over the seat and your head, right? So, but we could isolate these things just like a street mugging because we have other variables, right? The number of them, how they're moving, those kind of things, right? So, distribution, right? Are you surrounded versus like they're coming at you from one side, or they're almost like an arc, right? So it's that way. What's around you environmentally behind you, presence of weapons, terrain, open versus narrow, that kind of stuff, right? Again, primary objective, mobility and funneling, choosing which engagement to accept. Escape is priority unless protecting others, right? Or the type of weapons they have. Okay. Or you're almost 63 and you can be easily outrun by teenagers or 20 somethings because, well, you can run, you can't run as fast as them anymore. Okay. So, creating separation, using environment to produce attacker advantage, remembering that they're not out there. While they are operating in pack mode, they're not operating from the same brain. So there will be some unison if they've done it a lot, or and there will be the fact that they're ultimately individuals. Okay, so controlling space, that kind of stuff, right? Controlling their access, not letting not any of them get behind you if they are surrounding you. This is in the Togakudo ryu. And it's a whole bunch of this stuff across our different lineages. Each one has things that help you with certain scenarios, right? Shinden Fudo and Tagagi Yosho-ryu from the ground, Togakudo-ryu from being surrounded or dealing with multiple armed assailants, and you're not. You might have some shuriken or some blinding powder or whatever, but you don't have those things, okay? Now let's jump ahead. Last one here, weapon present attacks, right? Again, crossing over. But again, what type? Okay, this cross cuts all of them, just like the multiple attacker things does. But again, we want to emphasize avoidance, de-escalation, distance management. You need to know the effective distance. I want to be closer to somebody with a gun and farther away from somebody with a knife. What do you mean you want to be closer with somebody with a gun? Well, it's geometry, and you didn't have to like geometry in school to know that the farther away I am from him, as I move, he doesn't have to move as much. Like I just traversed almost, it was well over 90 degrees, 110 degrees. Okay. Didn't even have to step. Okay. But if I'm really, really close to him and I take one step to the side, he has to move a lot more to keep up. Right. So it's understanding the weapon's weaknesses, range, those kind of things. Right. Club weapons, short is different than long. Ultimately, if they hit you, they hurt you. But how much? The longer the weapon, the closer, the farther down the stick toward their hands you are. Yep, still hits you, but doesn't have the same kind of damage potential. Okay, I want to stay away from the tip of the weapon, that kind of thing. But at the same time, if it's a shorter weapon, if he gets frustrated, he could fucking throw it at me. But then if he throws it at me, I could pick it up, or now he doesn't have one. Or he threw it to maybe grab something else. Okay. And when weapons are present, did he bring it? Did he pick it up off the ground? Did he grab that hammer off a table? Whatever. It's not the same. Okay. Also, this could be you. What do you have? What do you have at hand? If I'm sitting at that restaurant, shit, salt and pepper shakers, there's sugar packets. There might be one of those stand-up napkin dispenser kind of things, drinks on the table, utensils, whatever. Okay, so those kind of things. Okay, all right. Very quickly, let's switch over here and take a look at some strategic and tactical principles regardless of what we're dealing with in here. Okay, so very quickly, right? These are high-level concepts that apply across scenarios. Right, this is a whole different ability and skill set, right, that gets overlaid on things, right? The first one we start with is scenario recognition, okay? Scenario recognition. What kind of scenario are you in, okay? This is the primary skill, okay? So scenario recognition, right? Is it a mugging? Are there weapons involved? Or is there more than me? Am I just getting into or trying to get into my car? Just got into my car. Am I trying to get out of my car? Am I in the process of exiting the vehicle? Am I outside the vehicle? Right? Do I have other ones with me? Am I in a seated position or am I standing? Right? Or did I get out? I already got shoved before I even knew what the hell was going on, and now I'm already on the ground. Okay? Where are you and what's going on? What's the problem to be solved? Okay? When we're beginners, the problem to be solved is he's throwing a punch and I'm going to do X, Y, Z. He's grabbing me one-handed, two-handed on a certain spot. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Okay? He pulled a knife. He's either stabbing or slashing or whatever. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. That's technique-based orientation. Scenario-based, lots of layers. Okay? Lots of layers. Right? So next, decision hierarchy. Okay, I'm going to zip through here. Decision hierarchy. We're not just making one decision: flight, fight, or flee, right? Or what is it? Fight, flight, or freeze. Yeah, we're not talking about that. Okay, that is a choice, right? But again, here at scenario recognition, the faster and more accurate recognition, just by default, yields better decisions than faster technique execution. Doesn't matter how fast we are with a technique. If we're slow to make decisions, they're going to get shots in on me, and right, I haven't even started yet. Okay, or I can be fast at executing, but I've gauged things incorrectly. Like this guy is bigger or it's wintertime and he's got thicker stuff on, or he's got a lot of biker leathers and whatever, right? He's wearing some kind of body armor and whatnot. And I do my favorite techniques and shit goes to, right? Or I've got a really fast punch, right? Hit this guy square in the jaw and he's, 250-pound MMA guy, biker, gang thug, whatever. And he's used to getting hit a lot and he doesn't drop. It doesn't do what I expected to do because, in the dojo, right? If I hit you there, man, you're obviously going to really. Okay. So decision hierarchy, right? Is what we're talking about when we're looking at. So phase 1 and 2 of the 8 phases, right? Phase 1, general awareness, right? Know these things, train these things, whatever. This allows me and these skills then to be able to do phase 2 to a much higher degree, which is situational awareness. What am I looking at? Okay. Here we're calling it scenario recognition, and that leads me into the decision hierarchy. Right. Phase 3 is escape to safety. Phase 4 and 5 are 2 different de-escalation phases. One is more about distraction. One is more about dissuasion. Okay. Phase 6 is physical confrontation. Phase 7 is dealing with the aftermath, PTSD, family doesn't like you anymore, whatever, right? Healing up from injuries, getting back to work, those kind of things. And phase 8 is dealing with company policy, the legal system, all that kind of stuff, right? So the decision hierarchy in that order, right? Escape, avoid, de-escalate, or deny him intimidation rights, so to speak, right? Disable, escape, all those kind of things, right? So where am I? The scenario here isn't just like, okay, well, obviously I'm going to try to escape first. Well, if I came around the corner, I just got in my car and dropped my keys, turned around, picked them up. As I'm standing up, big old bear hug. Well, we just eliminated escape to safety and the 2 de-escalation phases. We're all on in phase 6. We had no choice. Okay. The 8 phase scale that we give everybody is the ideal, and to show people that it's not either on and you're or off and you're safe, or suddenly you're in a fight. Okay. So let's see, environmental exploitation. Environmental exploitation. Okay. Just basically means using the environment, right, as an aid for your defense. Walls, vehicles, curbs, doorways, low light, pedestrians, those kind of things, right? What can I use, right? What's here for me to use, but also what's here for him to use, because that's a good news, bad news kind of thing, right? What will change my ability to see things, okay? In Ninjutsu, we operate from these really, really low levels. Nobody likes doing those because Hatsumi Sensei and the master teachers don't do them anymore because they're older. Okay? But what is the reason for a ninja getting low, especially in low light or night conditions? Okay? Unless you're wearing clothing with light switches on them or things that glow when light, any kind of light hits it or whatever, right? Because you got to wear style. Getting low, silhouettes at least his head or upper body against the skyline, because the sky is almost always, unless you're out in the middle of freaking nowhere, the sky is lighter, right, than the ground, and it allows more of my body to blend in with the ground, so it makes me harder to see and him easier to see. Okay, but if we're always just going to stay up here and we don't go to the ground unless we want to go to the ground or we're shoved to the ground. I don't like bending my knees because it makes my muscles hurt, and my ass cheeks hurt. Okay. So in an actual situation, you're only going to be able to do what you're able to do. Your level of preparedness is based on these 2 things and your understanding of these 2 realms. Your preparedness for these, your skill sets and whatnot get added to by these. Okay? So, environmental exploitation. Yeah. Okay. So, time and energy budgeting. Time and energy budgeting. Look at that. For all the people that complain they don't have enough money to train, you don't even need money here. We're talking about time and energy. Gotta train. Anyway, all right. Boy, the benefits of the old school. So again, there's a unwritten but not unspoken rule that I got from my teachers. It's not just in our art; it's in other arts as well. But you also see it in the techniques, right? We don't have these long, drawn-out kata. We may have a kata that has like a couple of moves, and somebody gets knocked away, but they don't go down, and then they come back in again, right? But if you look at the techniques, typically what you're going to see when engagement begins, right? When contact is made, things are over in way less than 10 seconds, and typically in 4 moves or less. Okay. One of the reasons for that is because we have glycogen stores in our muscles. Glycogen is a type of sugar. It allows us to do quick bursts of movement, but it burns off very quickly. And then your body either has to go into a resting state to let that go back, right? So the average person has 7 to 11 seconds of glycogen, like for wind sprints or doing something like all out, heavy wrestling, whatever. That's why you'll see quick burst of movement, and then people will start to stalk each other again, or they'll go into a holding kind of pattern, and then they'll do a quick further movement or whatever. And these cycles, these troughs and peaks happen in 7 to 11 second spikes and rest periods. Okay, we want to work with that natural kind of thing, right? So, but these short, violent bursts use massive amounts of energy. Okay, if we're going to be doing things for endurance and long things, everybody says it, right? It's in your language. Pace yourself, okay? Because you're actually going to be into fat stores, and you're actually using energy conservation, so you can go the distance instead of getting it over quickly. Okay, nobody runs a marathon the same way they run a sprint or a relay race. This doesn't work that way. Okay, so again, we need to know when to apply them. We need to know what it feels like physiologically, right? When the things are going. We need to understand that that's why when we're in a wrestling situation, we're not flailing with everything else. We're not trying to do everything at one time. We're firing the muscles necessary to protect or to apply, and we're trying to relax as much of everything else as possible so that, right, when these burn out, we can switch to something else. But the person that's wrestling with everything, right, they're either on or they're in holding pattern. Okay. This goes along with breathing and a bunch of other things. Okay. Next, legal and moral decision mode. Legal and moral. That's where I'm going to stop it. Legal and moral. This is a decision mode. Okay. Only you know how far you're willing to go. Okay. So again, we're always answering the question: can I escape safely? And if not, what minimal force neutralizes the threat to escape? Right. But legally, right, there's things like probable cause, there's duty to retreat, right? There's certain, in certain self-defense definitions, people have a duty to retreat, right? If you automatically engage, you're crossing a line that could turn it into now you're fighting and it's mutual assault as opposed to you could have extricated yourself, right? We talked about this before over here, right? The possible need to break laws to escape or to get yourself out. We need to normalize the moral calculation, the moral compass, so to speak, right? Again, still going to recommend legal counsel. As soon as something is over, right, go talk to somebody, because the shitstorm that can come on the tail end of you winning a situation could make you wish that maybe you didn't. Okay. I know. I'd rather be tried by 12 than carried by 6. But the only people that say that are ignorant of trial science, and they don't understand the way the game is played. And it's, again, not a fair fight if you're sitting at the defender's table. It just doesn't work that way. Okay. So psychological framing. Okay? Again, these are all skills. These are all abilities. Okay. So this is the counter to victim mentality. Okay. This is something that starts in our everyday living. Okay. There's a lot of people who want to be warriors. There's a lot of people that really want to be able to do this stuff, and they say they have the will and the intent to defend themselves, and maybe that's true. But to hear them with lesser problems, right? I can't, given X conditions, right? My priority is, and that could be a positive, could be a negative, whatever. Okay. So this is a recreating ourselves and changing how we operate, generally speaking, right? So one tactic is to build small wins, right? And so we find something like, as I was doing this, my teachers gave me assignments and whatnot, and I was doing this, reframing things. Like, so small wins might be, I catch myself saying, knowing my luck, because I inherited that from people I grew up with, right? The adults I grew up around, knowing my luck, right? And as soon as I would hear myself, my first small win was hearing myself saying it. Second small win was to create a script that could overwrite the first one, but it was always going to be after the fact. So I'd catch myself, and then I would recite the script. Okay, it has nothing to do with luck. This is what happens. I wasn't paying attention. I will do better to pay attention more. And I would recite that 3 to 5 times every time I caught myself doing that. And what ends up happening over time is I stopped saying, knowing my luck, and my brain just went to, right? You weren't focused. Here's what happened. You missed an opportunity. We're going to pay attention more, right? And then over time, guess what that did? It affected my awareness and my ability to pay attention to things. Does that mean that I do it right all the time? No. Things still pop off. But now, right, I might have a moment of, and then I'm back on again, because this is like being knocked down in a fight, right? Everything's working and all of a sudden you get knocked down or you trip over something, right? The more you spend in victim mindset, the longer it takes you to get back up or to recover. So whether I do it in everyday life or I do it because I got knocked down, I got to reestablish equilibrium. I have to reestablish a neutral state so that I'm ready for the next thing that's happening. Okay? But if every time something happens, I go into this freaking anger management thing, or I go into this tirade, or I just start throwing all kinds of comments at myself about how stupid I am and you don't fucking pay attention, all that kind of shit. Well, shit, I don't need any enemies in my life. Right? I'm kicking my own ass way more. Okay? But this is psychological framing. Okay? But then there's also pre-committed micro decisions, which goes to that mapping that I talked about earlier, right? If grab from behind, first thing I do, drop my knees, right? Second thing I do as I'm dropping my knees is to flare the elbows. Let's say it's a bear hug or something like that, right? But the first thing we do in all of Taijutsu is to drop the knees. So if we're training in the dojo and we know this lesson, but every time a partner grabs us, we don't do anything, even slowly, then it's not wired into muscle memory. As soon as he's reaching in to grab, I'm softening, I'm exaggerating now, but I'm softening my knees. Okay? Because I don't know what that grab's going to be like, even slowly. There could be a little push to it as he grabs, right? He doesn't mean to. He might, right? There might be a little pull to it. Okay? This is in Shinden Fudo Ryu. There's a kata called Shizen. He grabs and either pushes or pulls, and I need to be able to drift with that, right? To maintain, to neutralize the effect of it and maintain my equilibrium. Okay. So we're either doing the techniques or the techniques are alive through us. It's not the same. Okay. There's something, sometimes people call it red teaming, right? Red teaming, right? There's lots of other phrases, but I didn't want to confuse folks with another type of planning or mapping, but this is basically a response plan. Okay. Red teaming is planning for the worst plausible scenario given your environment. What's the worst thing that could happen? Okay? If you're attacked in your home, that's a scenario-based thing. I'm attacked in my home by how many intruders, right? Was I seated when they broke in the door? Did they ring the bell and I'm reaching to open the door and it gets knocked open? So if that's a possibility, then say I always approach my door to open it the way I approached doors when I was a cop, because bad guys shoot through doors. So I don't go walking up to a door with the handle on one side or the other and knock from the center. Still don't do it. Okay? If there's a window on one side, not on the other, I'm going to be on the non-window side. Right? Which is very different, right? But what's the worst possible scenario, right? And what I really need to do in everyday situations, even if it's my wife saying, what do you want to do for dinner tonight? I'm not the guy you're going to hear go, I don't know, what do you want to do? And then she says, I don't know, what do you want to do? Right? And we play that freaking game, right? Don't do that. Because the way we can get around that is to practice refusal, right? To be frozen by indecision. Okay? So are we adding little ki, which could just be whatever your language is, right? English, right? I could say get away, I could say back off, I could say hold it, those kind of things. Okay? So I'm applying extra little pieces, but in my everyday life, if I get stuck in an indecision mode, it means my brain's locked up. And pay attention the next time your brain locks up in indecision, or you're caught up in, I could eat here, I could eat here. Guess what you aren't not paying attention to? Everything else out here. I need to make a decision quickly. Okay? And if it doesn't matter, then whatever you want's fine with me. Well, I don't what I want. Okay. All right. What don't you want? Okay, I don't want that. Great. I'll pull into the next restaurant. Because if it truly doesn't matter, then you should be okay with pulling in. Okay? Now, I know that it does matter to the other person because I'm way less, I know people would look at it because I got a gut, way less finicky. No, it was military and survivalist kind of stuff. Unless I know it's poisonous, if I'm hungry, then I'm going to eat. It will do, right? If I do mind, I'm going to say, right, hey, I'm not sure if you thought about dinner tonight, but I'm kind of thinking about the sushi place. You okay with Japanese tonight? Okay, great, awesome. Okay, so again, practicing to just be a more decisive person, like a warrior, right? Again, I could be yelling "get away" to that person, but remember we talked about using bystanders and stuff, right? Call 911, and I could be just calling out to anybody, just yelling. Right? I could yell at the bad guy, call 911, which would confuse him, but somebody who's surprised by the scuffle, now shit, call 911, right? That kind of thing. Okay, and then involve yourself in cue-based training. Okay, cue as in like an impulse, not cue like a lot of my friends in the UK and other areas of the world, where in the US we line up, right? In other places you cue up, not that one. Okay, cue based, right? CUE. Okay, so train a few universal cues, right? Footwork cue to create space, hands up to protect, that kind of thing, right? When we're in training, my Mod 1 people, from day one, let's say we're doing a double lapel grab escape, and the technique is to crash down on the arms before moving in to do those things, okay? As soon as they're grabbed, they're going to shift and bring their hands up. Does a couple of different things, right? I want them to practice that because the technique is easier from here. It's already there. 2, it's sudden movement in front. And 3, later on, I can put on this face. Right? Like I'm surprised and he thinks he has more control. The reason to do it, or the opposite of that, is he grabs me and I go to do this technique with my arms down here. As soon as I bring my arms up, he's going to do something else. He's going to tighten up, shove, push, let go to block, whatever, because I'm actively doing something. But if I do this, that's the response to the grab. And it's like chess. I've now put myself in that position where I can engage in direct movement, one of the universal principles within our art, right? So again, hands up to protect, drop in the jaw, those kind of things, drop in the knees, right? Practicing loud vocalization, right? It's amazing how people that like speak the way I do, under pressure, their voice breaks, right? Back up, right? Because of all the tension. Okay. Escape count, things like that, right? There's a bunch of things that you could do, but they apply across different scenarios. Anyway, all right. So if I miss something over here, put it in the comments. If you think I missed something over here that's an important skill, put it in the comments. Okay. If you thought all this stuff was hokey, I don't know why you're still here. Okay. So don't put bullshit stuff in the comments because that would be stupid. Okay. Anyway, so we're going to isolate one of these things. What they're going to kind of cross over a little bit, but we're going to look at a particular type of scenario, big broad picture, and then a couple of conditions. Okay. So for the Friday masterclass, see, it's marked 2-on-1 escape masterclass. Everybody wants to like, what would you do if it's multiple attackers? How many? Well, I don't know, like 3. Well, dude, defending against 3 people is not 3 times more difficult than defending against 1, right? Defending against 2, all these kind of things. It's not the same, okay? So before we worry about defending against 5 or 3 or whatever, let's start with 2, okay? So Friday Masterclass, we're going to work on 3 very specific, very common 2-on-1 attacks. In one instance, one person is grabbing and immobilizing, and the other person is pounding, right? In another scenario, they both have you, and they're dragging you off somewhere, waiting car, whatever. And the third one, you can't not make noise, can you? I thought I locked the door. I did. The person who walked in has a key. Should have put a sign up. So the third thing will be they're both moving in to punch or kick or whatever, and we have to control that and not let them get around it, whatever. Okay. So anyway, I think that's it. Yeah. So if you want to do that, you can hop over onto that page and get yourself signed up for the Friday class. Don't forget also that, again, if you're listening to this way after the 17th or the 19th of October of 2025, then it won't count. But if you're live on, don't forget that this weekend is our fall camp intensive. Okay. So you can also check that out at onlineninjaacademy.com/events. This one, you're going to go to 2-on-1 Escape Masterclass to get yourself signed up to be in for that a la carte thing. And even if you can't make it, sign up for it, right? Pay your little tuition things, like $9 US, and you'll get the recording, so you won't have to miss the lessons. All right. That's it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I will talk to everybody again real soon. So if I don't see you during camp or in one of the classes, I will see you next week on Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday.